Hello. I am working on getting everything going. Um, I need to be able to see the chat here. Make sure I can see all the things that are going to go on. Hopefully this works. And where's the chat on here? I've done this in a minute. Okay, here we go. Hopefully this is all working now. There we go. Okay. So, if you don't know what's happening, we are. Hi, Trev. Hi, Enrique. Hey, Will. We are reading Harry Potter because during my singing streams, if we reach a certain donation goal, I do Harry Potter bedtime story reading. And this is a very exciting moment because we're going to finish book 5 today. We're on Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. That's book 5. And we're on the last chapter, chapter 38. If you're reading the book, we're on page 859, I believe. Yes, beginning of 859. Hi, David. So here we go. He was sprinting out of the dormitory and down the spiral staircase, hitting the walls as he ran and barely noticing. He hurtled across the empty common room, through the porthole, and off along the corridor, ignoring the fat lady who called after him. The feast is about to start, you know. You're cutting it very fine. But Harry had no intention of going to the feast. How could it be that the place was full of ghosts whenever you didn't need one, yet now... Already yawning. He ran down staircases and along corridors and met nobody, either alive or dead. They were all clearly in the great hall. Outside his charms classroom, he came to a halt, panting and thinking disconsolately that he would have to wait until later, till after the end of the feast. But just as he had given up hope, he saw it, a translucent somebody drifting across the end of the corridor. Hey, Nick! Nick! The ghost stuck its head back out of the wall, revealing the extravagantly plumed hat and dangerously waddling head of Sir Nicholas de Mimsy Porpington. Good evening, he said, withdrawing the rest of his body from the solid stone and smiling at Harry. There's going to be an ad break on Twitch. Sorry. In 2.5 minutes. So if you want to watch, I'm also live on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube. If you want to not miss anything because of the ad. Okay. Good evening, he said, withdrawing the rest of his body from the solid stone and smiling at Harry. I'm not the only one who is late, then, though, he sighed, in rather different senses, of course. Nick, can I ask you something? A most peculiar expression stole over nearly headless Nick's face as he inserted a finger in the stiff ruff at his neck and tugged it a little straighter, apparently to give himself thinking time. He desisted only when his partially severed neck seemed about to give way completely. Now, Harry? Said Nick, looking discomforted. Can it wait until after the feast? No, Nick, please, said Harry. I really need to talk to you. Can we go in here? Harry opened the door of the nearest classroom and nearly headless Nick sighed. Oh, very well, he said, looking resigned. I can't pretend I haven't been expecting it. Harry was holding the door open for him, but he drifted through the wall instead. Expecting what? Harry asked as he closed the door. You to come and find me, said Nick, now gliding over to the window and looking out at the darkening grounds. It happens sometimes when somebody has suffered a loss. Mark, can I ask you a quick favor? What is it? Hey, David. Can only imagine Don Cleese here. Sorry. Okay. Well, said Harry, refusing to be deflected. You were right. I've come to find you. Nick said nothing. Said Harry, who was finding this more awkward than he had anticipated. It's just, you're dead, but you're still here, aren't you? Nick sighed and continued to gaze out at the grounds. That's right, isn't it? Harry urged him. You died, but I'm talking to you. You can walk around Hogwarts and everything, can't you? Yes, said nearly headless Nick quietly. I walk and talk, yes. Oh, yeah. I hope your dad's surgery goes really well and he recovers quickly. Yeah. If you're watching, I hope that for you. Um, so you came back, didn't you? Said Harry urgently. People can come back, right? As ghosts. They don't have to disappear completely. Well, he added impatiently, when Nick continued to say nothing. Nearly headless Nick hesitated, then said, Not everyone can come back as a ghost. What do you mean? Said Harry quickly. Only wizards. Oh, said Harry, and he almost laughed with relief. Well, that's okay then. The person I'm asking about is a wizard, so he can come back, right? Nick turned away from the window and looked mournfully at Harry. He won't come back. Who? Sirius Black, said Nick. But you did, said Harry angrily. You came back. You're dead, and you didn't disappear. Wizards can leave an imprint of themselves upon the earth to walk palely where their living selves once trod, said Nick miserably, but very few wizards choose that path. Make a song about Harry Potter? I have friends that had done that. They had a whole group. Or a whole, like a whole album, or, a bunch of songs. Why not? Said Harry. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Sirius won't care if it's unusual. He'll come back. I know he will. And so strong was his belief that Harry actually turned his head to check the door for sure for a split second that he was going to see Sirius, pearly white and transparent, but beaming, walking through it toward him. He will not come back, repeated Nick quietly. He will have gone on. What do you mean, gone on? Said Harry quickly. Gone on where? Listen, what happens when you die, anyway? Where do you go? Why doesn't everyone come back? Why isn't this place full of ghosts? Why? I cannot answer, said Nick. You're dead, aren't you? Said Harry exasperatedly. Who could answer better than you? I was afraid of death, said Nick. I chose to remain behind. I sometimes wonder whether I oughtn't to have. Well, that is neither here nor there. In fact, I am neither here nor there. He gave a small, sad chuckle. I know nothing of the secrets of death, Harry, for I chose my feeble imitation of life instead. I believe learned wizards study the matter in the Department of Mysteries. Don't talk to me about that place, said Harry fiercely. I forgot to turn on my moonlight. There we go. I'm sorry not to have been more help, said Nick gently. Well, do excuse me, the feast, you know. And he left the room, leaving Harry there alone, gazing blankly at the wall through which Nick had disappeared. Harry felt almost as though he had just lost his godfather all over again, in losing the hope that he might be able to see or speak to him once more. He walked slowly and miserably back up through the empty castle, wondering whether he would ever feel cheerful again. He had turned the corner toward the fat lady's corridor when he saw somebody up ahead fastening a note to a board on the wall. A second glance showed him that it was Luna. There were no good hiding places nearby. She was bound to have heard his footsteps, and in any case, Harry could hardly muster the energy to avoid anyone at the moment. Hello, said Luna vaguely, glancing around at him as she stepped back from the notice. How come you're not at the feast? Harry asked. Well, I've lost most of my possessions, said Luna serenely. People take them and hide them, you know. But as it's the last night, I really do need them back, so I've been putting up signs. Hi, Richard. You've been watching us on Lone Star? That's fun. It's not exactly pleasant. It's a mirror image. She gestured toward the notice board upon which, sure enough, she had pinned a list of all her missing books and clothes with a plea for their return. An odd feeling rose in Harry, an emotion quite different from the anger and grief that had filled him since Sirius's death. It was a few moments before he realized that he was feeling sorry for Luna. "How can people hide your stuff?" he asked, her frowning. "Oh, well," she shrugged. "I think they think I'm a bit odd, you know. Some people call me Loony Lovegood, actually." Harry looked at her, and the new feeling of pity intensified rather painfully. "There's no reason for them to take your things," he said flatly. "Do you want help finding them?" "Oh, no," she said, smiling at him. "They'll come back. They always do in the end. It was just that I wanted to pack tonight. Anyway, why aren't you at the feast?" Harry shrugged. Just didn't feel like it. "No," said Luna, observing him with those oddly misty protuberant eyes. "I don't suppose you do. That man the Death Eaters killed was your godfather, wasn't he? Ginny told me." Harry nodded curtly, but found that for some reason he did not mind Luna talking about Sirius. He had just remembered that she too could see Thestrals. "Have you—" he began. "I mean, who— has anyone you've known ever died?" "Yes," said Luna simply. "My mother. She was quite an extraordinary witch, you know, but she did like to experiment, and one of her spells went rather badly wrong one day. I was 9. "I'm sorry," Harry mumbled. "Yes, it was rather horrible," said Luna conversationally. "I still feel very sad about it sometimes, but I've still got Dad, and anyway, it's not as though I'll never see Mum again, is it?" Isn't it?" said Harry uncertainly. She shook her head in disbelief. "Oh, no, come on. You heard them just behind the veil, didn't you?" "You mean in the room with the archway? They were just lurking out of sight, that's all. You heard them." They looked at each other. Luna was smiling slightly. Harry did not know what to say or think. Luna believed so many extraordinary things, yet he had been sure he had heard voices behind the veil, too. "Are you sure you don't want me to help you look for your stuff?" he said. "Oh, no," said Luna. "No, I think I'll just go down and have some pudding and wait for it all to turn up. It always does in the end. Well, have a nice holiday, Harry." Yeah, you too." She walked away from him, and as he watched her go, he found that the terrible weight in his stomach seemed to have lessened slightly. I know I'd be dead. Oh, what? The journey home on the Hogwarts Express next day was eventful in several ways. Firstly, Malfoy, Crabbe, and Goyle, who had clearly been waiting all week for the opportunity to strike without teacher witnesses, attempted to ambush Harry halfway down the train as he made his way back from the toilet. The attack might have succeeded had it not been for the fact that they unwittingly chose to stage the attack right outside a compartment full of DA members, who saw what was happening through the glass and rose as one to rush to Harry's aid. By the time Ernie Macmillan, Hannah Abbott, Susan Bones, Justin Finch-Fletchley, and Anthony Goldstein and Terry Boot had finished using a wide variety of the hexes and jinxes Harry had taught them, Malfoy, Crabbe, and Goyle resembled nothing so much as 3 gigantic slugs squeezed into Hogwarts uniforms, as Harry, Ernie, and Justin hoisted them into the luggage rack and left them there to ooze. "I must say I'm looking forward to seeing Malfoy's mother's face when he gets off the train," said Ernie with some satisfaction as he watched Malfoy squirm above him. Ernie had never quite got over the indignity of Malfoy docking points from Hufflepuff during his brief spell as a member of the Inquisitorial Squad. "Oh, thank you. You, me, myself, and I." "Goyle's mum will be really pissed, though," said Ron, who had come to investigate the source of the commotion. "He's loads better. Will be really pleased, though. He's loads better looking now. Anyway, Harry, the food trolley has just stopped if you want anything." Harry thanked the others and accompanied Ron back to their compartment, where he bought a large pile of cauldron cakes and pumpkin pasties. Hermione was reading the Daily Prophet again. Ginny was doing a quiz in the Quibbler, and Neville was stroking his Mimbulus Mimbletonia, which had grown a great deal over the year and now made odd crooning noises when touched. Harry and Ron whiled away most of the journey playing wizard chess, while Hermione read out snippets from the Prophet. It was now full of articles about how to repel Dementors, attempts by the Ministry to track down Death Eaters, and hysterical letters claiming that the writer had seen Voldemort walking past their house that very morning. "It hasn't really started yet," sighed Hermione gloomily, folding up the newspaper again. "But it won't be long now." "Hey, Harry," said Ron, nodding toward the glass window onto the corridor. Harry looked around. Cho was passing, accompanied by Marietta Edgecombe, who was wearing a balaclava. His and Cho's eyes met for a moment. Cho blushed and kept walking. Harry looked back down at the chessboard just in time to see one of his pawns chase off its square by Ron's knight. "What's going on with you and her, anyway?" Ron asked quietly. "Nothing," said Harry truthfully. "I heard she's going out with someone else now," said Hermione tentatively. Harry was surprised to find that this information did not hurt at all. Wanting to impress Cho seemed to belong to a past that was no longer quite connected with him. So much of what he had wanted before Sirius's death felt that way these days. The week that had elapsed since he had last seen Sirius seemed to have lasted much, much longer. It stretched across two universes, the one with Sirius in it and the one without. "You're well out of it, mate," said Ron forcefully. "I mean, she's quite good looking and all that, but you want someone a bit more cheerful." "She's probably cheerful enough with someone else," said Harry, shrugging. "Who's she with now, anyway?" Ron asked Hermione, but it was Ginny who answered. "Michael Corner," she said. "Michael, but," said Ron, craning around in his seat to stare at her. "But you were going out with him." "Not anymore," said Ginny resolutely. "He didn't like Gryffindor beating Ravenclaw at Quidditch and got really sulky, so I ditched him, and he ran off to comfort Cho instead." She scratched her nose absently with the end of her quill, turned the quibbler upside down, and began marking her answers. Ron looked highly delighted. "Well, I always thought he was a bit of an idiot," he said, prodding his queen forward toward Harry's quivering castle. "Good for you. Just choose someone better next time." He cast Harry an oddly furtive look as he said it. "Well, I've chosen Dean Thomas. Would you say he's better?" asked Ginny vaguely. "What?" shouted Ron, upending the chessboard. Crookshanks went plunging after the pieces, and Hedwig and Pigwidgeon twittered and hooted angrily from overhead. Just saw that 40 monkeys escaped from a research facility in South Carolina, and the scientific analysis was that the monkeys are acting goofy. Okay. Oh. As the train slowed down and they approached to King's Cross, Harry thought he had never wanted to leave it less. He even wondered fleetingly what would happen if he simply refused to get off, but remained stubbornly sitting there until the 1st of September, when it would take him back to Hogwarts. When it finally puffed to a standstill, however, he lifted down Hedwig's cage and prepared to drag his trunk from the train as usual. Just a second. When the ticket inspector signaled to him, Ron and Hermione, that it was safe to walk through the magical barrier between platforms 9 and 10, however, he found a surprise awaiting him on the other side. A group of people standing there to greet him who he had not expected at all. There was Mad-Eye Moody, looking quite as sinister with his bowler hat pulled low over his magical eye as he would have done without it, his gnarled hands clutching a long staff, his body wrapped in a voluminous traveling cloak. Tonks stood just behind him, her bright bubblegum pink hair gleaming in the sunlight, filtering through the dirty glass station ceiling, wearing heavily patched jeans and a bright purple t-shirt bearing the legend, The Weird Sisters. Next to Tonks was Lupin, his face pale, his hair graying, a long and threadbare overcoat covering a shabby jumper and trousers. At the front of the group stood Mr. and Mrs. Weasley, dressed in their Muggle best, and Fred and George, who were both wearing brand new jackets in some lurid green, scaly material. "Ron, Ginny," called Mrs. Weasley, hurrying forward and hugging her children tightly. "Oh, and Harry, dear, how are you?" "Fine," lied Harry, and as she pulled him into a tight embrace, over her shoulder he saw Ron goggling at the twins' new clothes. "What are they supposed to be?" he asked, pointing at the jackets. "Finest dragon skin, little bro," said Fred, giving his zip a little tweak. "Business is booming, and we thought we'd treat ourselves." "Hello, Harry," said Lupin, as Mrs. Weasley let go of Harry and turned to greet Hermione. "Hi," said Harry. "I didn't expect... What are you all doing here?" "Well," said Lupin with a slight smile, "we thought we might have a little chat with your aunt and uncle before letting them take you home." "I don't know if that's a good idea," said Harry at once. "Oh, I think it is," growled Moody, who had limped a little closer. "That'll be them, will it, Potter?" He pointed with his thumb over his shoulder. His magical eye was evidently peering through the back of his head and his bowler hat. Harry leaned an inch or so to the left to see where Mad-Eye was pointing, and there, sure enough, were the three Dursleys, who looked positively appalled to see Harry's reception committee. "Ah, Harry," said Mr. Weasley, turning from Hermione's parents, whom he had been greeting enthusiastically, and who were taking it in turns to hug Hermione. "Well, shall we do it then?" "Yeah, I reckon so," said Moody. He and Mr. Weasley took the lead across the station toward the place where the Dursleys stood, apparently rooted to the floor. Hermione disengaged herself gently from her mother to join the group. "Good afternoon, Mr. Weasley," said Mr. Weasley pleasantly to Uncle Vernon, coming to a halt right in front of him. "You might remember me. My name's Arthur Weasley." As Mr. Weasley had single-handedly demolished most of the Dursleys' living room 2 years previously, Harry would have been very surprised if Uncle Vernon had forgotten him. Sure enough, Uncle Vernon turned a deeper shade of puce and glared at Mr. Weasley, but chose not to say anything, perhaps because the Dursleys were outnumbered 2-1. Aunt Petunia looked both frightened and embarrassed. She kept glancing around as though terrified somebody she knew would see her in such company. Dudley, meanwhile, seemed to be trying to look small and insignificant, a feat at which he was failing extravagantly. We thought we'd just have a few words with you about Harry," said Mr. Weasley, smiling. Yeah, growled Moody, about how he's treated and when he's at your place. Uncle Vernon's mustache seemed to bristle with indignation, possibly because the bowler hat gave him the entirely mistaken impression that he was dealing with a kindred spirit. He addressed himself to Moody. I am not aware that it is any of your business what goes on in my house. I expect what you're not aware of would fill several books, Dursley, growled Moody. Anyway, that's not the point, interjected Tonks, whose pink hair seemed to offend Aunt Petunia more than all the rest put together, for she closed her eyes rather than look at her. The point is, if we find out you've been horrible to Harry, and make no mistake, we will hear about it, added Lupin pleasantly. Yes, said Mr. Weasley, even if you won't let Harry use the belly tone. Telephone, whispered Hermione. Yeah, if we get any hint that Potter's been mistreated in any way, you'll have us to answer to, said Moody. Uncle Vernon swelled ominously. His sense of outrage seemed to outweigh even his fear of this bunch of oddballs. Are you threatening me, sir? He said so loudly that passers-by actually turned to stare. Yes, I am, said Mad-Eye, who seemed rather pleased that Uncle Vernon had grasped this fact so quickly. And do I look like the kind of man who can be intimidated? Barked Uncle Vernon. Well, said Moody, pushing back his bowler hat to reveal his sinisterly revolving magical eye. Uncle Vernon leapt backward in horror and collided painfully with a luggage trolley. Yes, I'd have to say you do, Dursley. He turned away from Uncle Vernon and surveyed Harry. So, Potter, give us a shout if you need us. If we don't hear from you for 3 days in a row, we'll send someone along. Aunt Petunia whimpered piteously. It could not have been plainer that she was thinking of what the neighbors would say if they caught sight of these people marching up the garden path. Bye then, Potter, said Moody, grasping Harry's shoulder for a moment with a gnarled hand. Take care, Harry, said Lupin quietly. Keep in touch. Harry, we'll have you away from there as soon as we can, Mrs. Weasley whispered, hugging him again. We'll see you soon, mate, said Ron anxiously, shaking Harry's hand. Really soon, Harry, said Hermione earnestly. We promise. Harry nodded. He somehow could not find words to tell them what it meant to him to see them all ranged there, on his side. Instead, he smiled, raised a hand in farewell, turned around, and led the way out of the station toward the sunlit street with Uncle Vernon, Aunt Petunia, and Dudley hurrying along in his wake. The end of Book 5. So the next time we do a reading, it's going to be Book 6. Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. All right. Well, I gotta go. I have to make things for my niece's birthday party tomorrow, so I'm off. And I'll see you again soon. Hey, Tessa. I don't know if you're still there, but hi. All right. How do I do this? Oh, and let's see. I need to do a raid. Do you have any suggestions? And I think Richard got us there. Wait, what? Oh, to another reading. Good night. Let's do a raid, but I don't know who. If you have any suggestions, let me know. Liz Vega? Could do Liz Vega. Or Sashi Boom. Okay. Raid space Sashi Boom. Did it work? No. What did I do wrong? Oh, raid Sashi Boom. There we go. Yes?
Are you gonna make the cake pop?
Yes, I'm coming. I'm almost done.
Okay.
Okay.